All right. Could you tell me about the Teakwood room?
Don't know about the teakwood room.
Okay.
No.
Because I've heard it was a thing that used to be in Holton, I believe, and then they completely dismantled it and took it to Lawrence University.
Yeah, that would not surprise me.
Okay.
No, I don't. No, that was gone long before I was here.
Okay. Um, so then, when a lot of these buildings are being renovated and like stuff is being moved around, a lot of it is being marked as like surplus to be taken to the surplus center. What are your general thoughts on surplus?
Oh, we don't have enough of it. I mean, if you look around my office, I mean, these, the steel case desks I have, these were here when I came here, and they were old when I got here. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything in this room I have that is under 40 years of old, with except for maybe the computers and the refrigerator, the coffee machine. I mean, this stuff was old when I got it. I mean, I've got stuff. One of my old bookcases has a Wilkie for President sticker on it. I mean, surplus. Usually, what happens is people go through the surplus. I mean, we're going through that now with the center out in Waukesha. People will go through, and if they can find something they like, they can claim it off surplus. It's pretty. The stuff in it is pretty valueless. I mean, in the sense of, if you're an undergraduate, I could see doing it for your 4 years, if you rented a home. But I mean, the stuff is like, we should get. It's functional barely, but I mean, it's pretty worn.
Okay. Is there anything that might have been taken by surplus that you disagreed with?
Well, there were some things I would love to have owned. I mean, when the renovation happened in mid '90s for Johnson, there was this beautiful oak table in our conference room with these wonderful chairs. I mean, the most beautiful chairs, oak table, and they had to be moved out because they were renovating the room. And we came to find out that the chancellor took the table and the chairs for his own office. So we never got them back. I mean, it was the most beautiful. I mean, it really was. It was really, So usually, that's been my experience. We've had it happen 4 or 5 times where a dean or a chancellor or a provost will, stuff that should belong to us has been taken by the administration for their own purposes, because it's old, it's beautiful, it's old, it's wonderful stuff, and when they find out about it, they take it. If they can. So yeah, it's that. I kind of disagree with that. It's like, I understand them wanting it, but oh God, it's like, this stuff is like, some of the stuff is amazing. So what's been over the years is that basically the stuff here has gotten older, less valuable, because anything with value, administration essentially will take if they can get it. If they know we have it and they can figure out how to take it, they'll take it from us. So, you know.
Okay. Can you say anything about any of the other Downer buildings?
Well, I mean, they've gone through the same kind of renovation, upgrade. They've got the same cubby hole. A lot of the design of this whole complex was built for. It was built as kind of a dorm complex in the 1890, what I call 1890s, 1900. And Eschweiler had a desire to kind of build these complex buildings that would have hidden spaces, or spaces where that would not be frequently traveled. That would be wonderful for the occupants because it gave them a more homey, like, for example, the window seats, the radiators window seats, which in the winter, of course, are warm and people can sit and look out the window, and they're made, and they're kind of a bench, and they're really nice. And then he had all sorts of other little places like that, where things that would be, by modern standards, inconvenient or not efficient, but they were designed to be more homey, more friendly to human habitation, kind of thing. And so the designs, every so often you come across, like, oh, why did they do that? You know, like for example, one of the things that he did, which when you connect Holton and Merrill, the floors are offset, so like there's 7 or 8 stairs going down, and it used to be there was a door there, so it kind of kept people from going from the classroom into the dorm area. So it gave a kind of privacy, if you will, to each of the dorms, separated from that. I mean, today it makes no sense at all because there's not dorms, and you've got this, instead of walking down the hallway. But you can also tell that they were not there was no American Disability Act because the stuff is not at all compliant with, in terms of its. I mean, we've retrofitted to make it compliant, but back then, I mean, it would not have been at all compliant with ADA expectations, and some of the entrances to the building are overly ornate. In other words, we would not design today an ornate or entrance of that kind, or we wouldn't have little side rooms. We wouldn't have an ornate entrance like in Holton, and have side rooms where people could hold where people could go and meet with somebody and hold a private conversation with them. Now, of course, those are just offices, but they're offices with windows inside, because you weren't going to let a female student and a male be alone without chaperone. So what they did is they created internal windows so that you could see them. So they couldn't be doing anything immoral, but they could have some sense of privacy, at least for conversation. So yeah, there's a lot of I mean, at one level it's well designed, but it's a really weird design, because it's not the purpose it was being used for made sense back then, and he created a very functional space. But by our standards, it's not particularly. It's just like, why is this there, or what's the implication of this, and why? Like, for example, the stairway goes all the way to the ceiling. The stairway doesn't stop at the third floor; it goes up another one. So if there's another bench there, so if you wanted to be alone, you could go up there to the bench where there's a radiator and sit and read by yourself and be apart and get no traffic. But you would never have a stairway like that to nowhere in today's construction. It just would make no sense at all. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting to throw back to an older sense of what you were doing, what the building was designed for.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about Eschweiler?
Well, I don't know a lot about Eschweiler other than what I studied briefly when I took art history. He was fascinated with spaces and with designs, and if you look up the stairways and up, like, probably the best example is to go to the bottom of the stairway here and look up the stairway. It has kind of this repeating pattern going off into space, which he's very familiar. It's what the prints are all about. So he has this kind of notion of transformative of spaces being kind of lost, and spaces being changing as you go through. I mean, we have a functional sundial, for example, on the front of the building, which is kind of an interesting, and it's got this kind of castle, effect, which, it's not a castle, and the doors are these big wooden doors that swing out, which swing, that's like, so you have this kind of English castle effect, which is kind of a weird sort of way, and then the water spouts with dragons and the gargoyles and all the other little things that would be kind of ornate, but make it a little different from other buildings of its kind. He didn't design a lot of buildings in the Midwest. I mean, he did these buildings, also the stuff that we inherited out by Fredert. He actually designed those brick buildings too. Which is really kind of interesting that we actually got those as well. But it's just a very interesting way of him wanting to seek a different use of space. To some extent, he reminds me a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright in that Prairie Home, where you want to have a very functional space. But for him, the functionality wasn't the same as Wright focused on efficiency for functionality, and Wright focused on more functionality for kind of using space for multiple purposes and allowing people to hide off in little nooks and crannies. I think Eichweiler, cats would have loved him. I think because of the way he designed space. You know, a cat would have loved it because they could go to all these little interesting areas.
And in Merrill Hall, there's all these little like observation rooms in between the classrooms. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, those are when we built the labs. Originally there was just 2 classrooms, and the observation room was built in there. That was because we were using the labs to run experiments and do observation and collect data. That way you could you could sit in the control room and you could run 2 cameras. We had sets of cameras. So there were 2 sets of controls for recording, one for this room, one for this room. And so you had a one-way mirror and microphones where you could basically listen in, and we could hit cameras and record. It was also great teaching because we could use it for public speaking. We could record speeches. Originally, we would run a class, and we would split the class in half and record half the class here and half the class there. That meant we could give double the number of speeches in a class because instead of having to listen through 20 speeches, they only had to listen to 10. So we could actually increase the number of assignments. And then it was easy because you had them all recorded, so you could grade off the recordings. And when students didn't like their grades, they say, well, if there was an argument about whether or not something was graded effectively, whether they performed a behavior they needed to perform, you had a videotape of it you could go back to. And students also were required to supply their own videotape. So we recorded the videotape of their speech on their videotape, and then we gave them back their videotape, so they had to go watch their speech and provide comments on what they were doing correctly. So it was really effective tool. Of course, those days are long since. The control rooms now are not control rooms; they're just used for storage. I mean, eventually, I think I'm assuming they'll remove the storage. They'll remove them, and they'll become part of the classroom. But that would require a lot of money, so I doubt that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Okay. And was that original to the building, or was that?
Oh no, that was added.
Okay.
I mean, they went through a renovation in the mid '80s, where they renovated this entire space, and that was part of the renovation of the classrooms. They were removing a lot of the classrooms and renovating the offices to make them more less dorm-like and more office-like. So each successive renovation has changed the space to make it less and less look like a residential campus and more like a more traditional institutional space.
Okay. And when it was renovated, I believe this was in the 80s, it was renovated to connect all 3 buildings.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, originally the buildings did not have all the connections they did. And so they basically cut holes in walls and put stairs in to make them connected. So, and that was, originally they were connected more through the basement and through the ground area. And they connected them all and put, one of the new things was connecting Holton. They were connected to the basement, but they were not connected. So they built a little connection on the first floor between Holton and Merrill. Holton and Merrill. Yeah. So, it just was if you're going to renovate all the stuff, you might as well put something. I mean, that's probably one of the few things that's actually new, by the standards of this building. That's only 40 years old. So.
And then I heard that 2 new places just moved in. I believe it was the Indigenous and the Latino. Could you talk about those?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. before Indigenous moved in, it was when the sports annex was being renovated, it was sports. And before it was sports, we were down there. So when they renovated the sports thing, they renovated 3 or 4 rooms here and moved us out of the first floor of Merrill into the second floor of Merrill, and this classroom was converted. And another class, they converted they got rid of a couple of classrooms and converted what used to be our conference room, became our main office. So we lost our conference room. Then they moved the sports people there. And then when the sports people moved out to go back to what became the new center, they're going to move somebody in, obviously. They moved Indigenous in. And Jams was here, and it went over to Bolton, I think. And then they moved linguistics in. I mean, it's been one of those. And we were originally down in the little annex down on the first ground floor of Merrill. They moved our graduates, when journalism moved over there, they moved our graduate students up to the third floor rather. The annex was flooding. I mean, and that was part of the renovation about 15 years ago for the back. They renovated all of the parking lots and stuff, because it used to be when we had a really bad rainstorm, that would flood, and you'd have 2 inches of water, which was causing, as you can imagine, all sorts of problems. So what they did was they eventually had to renovate that. And that became some sort of psychology was running sort of lab space. There's like a psychology lab down there. And of course they moved us up here to give that to psychology. I mean, it's just over the years when things have kind of moved around.
Okay. So you've worked here for almost 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've seen a lot of change in the university. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, originally, 40 years ago, this was it was an institution that had 17 doctoral programs that most of them were not very good, to be honest with you. It had about 24,000 students. And then it became much larger in terms of students. It went from eventually 17 to I think 35, 40 doctoral programs. The funding has changed a bit. When we first got here, it was 38% of the money was state money, and then maybe 15% tuition. Now it's like 15% state and 30%, 40% tuition money. We had no endowment at all, which was that was a disaster. We still don't have a great endowment, but we're on our way. We have a few $100 million now, so at least we've got some endowment, which helps. So it's become a kind of slowly. It's become a much better, in terms of the standards of a university, much better university. It still suffers from an identity issue, and it made a series of strategic choices. I mean, there were back in the 90s. I think the big choice for this place was it going to. There were two routes. It could become a graduate institution, kind of like what Wayne State is in Michigan. Most people don't realize, but Wayne State has more graduate students than Michigan State and Michigan combined. Its functions graduate education. The undergraduates go to Michigan State, Eastern Michigan, etc. We could have gone that route, which would have been kind of a Wayne State route, which would have changed our trajectory, where we would have affiliated with the Medical College of Wisconsin, Freighter, Columbia, and done more medical research and more graduate-oriented things, and send our undergraduate population to Parkside, because Parkside at that point has a great big space and could have expanded. I mean, in other words, they could have built dorms, could have expanded, but it would have meant kind of cooperating with Parkside. And, for a lot of different reasons, just never really. It started to take off, and then didn't. And so we went through a second, when Carlos was here, we went through a alternative where we built the freshwater sciences in the School of Public Health. And I was actually on the chair of the budget committee. That was an enormous gamble, to be honest with you, because we did not have the money for it, and the legislature was never going to give us money for anything. So we went through. We kind of said we'll take the money. We'll cut off part of what we're doing now. We'll expand it, and we'll hope for more grant money and for more tuition money. And unfortunately, what happened was the tuition money we needed didn't happen because enrollments fell. Enrollment fell combined with the fact that the state government, through the recession, also cut back. So we took a $10 million hit from the state legislature, and we had $10 million that we had to lose in tuition. Then there was a $10 million hit on the additional costs. So there was a $30 million pill, which nobody can swallow that kind of thing without. And so we're kind of trying to get back from that. I mean, that was just devastating, and we were really trying to get back from that. We had some, I think the DEI stuff would have helped us. We had some moves, and of course, Trump's killed that. So that's kind of like, it's a place where I think, I describe my reaction to the place. It's a place that's made some good moves, but its circumstances have never, it's a kind of Willy Loman thing. It never quite works out. And so we don't have the endowment. We're not Madison. We don't have the endowment to fall back on. So if something doesn't work out, it's tough times. So our cost per credit hour is still low compared to other places. Our achievement per dollar is real high. It's tough. So yeah.
All right, and can you talk about the communications college, how that's evolved while you've been here?
Oh, well, communication, we went from an MA program where our MA program was always in the top 5 nationally, and then we went to a PhD program, and we're about maybe 18th out of 100 programs. I mean, we're not the top. We don't have the money for that, frankly. That would require a lot more money we have, but we're a very solid, good program. The advantage we have is that we could not service our students without the doctoral TAs because we don't have. It's too expensive to do faculty, and we can't get enough master students to teach. And we also need upper division classes taught, so the doctoral students can do that, which MA students can't. There's a shortage of PhDs in communication, where most disciplines, the way they evaluate it is, it's how many years does it take you to replace your entire discipline? In English, it's 8. They replace every faculty member every 8 years for the number of doctoral students. In communication, it's 32. So if a person gets a doctorate in communication, there is not a replacement for them for 32 years. So basically, we have a shortage. In journalism, it's like 35. So journalism is actually worse than we are. Every place else, it's like 8, 10, 12. So they got way too many PhDs. We have too few. That's the advantage we have, is that our people all get jobs. I mean, they don't have to worry about, as long as they get the doctorate, they're going to have a job. Don't have to worry about it. And that's at least nice. So it's changed the way we do things. We're more flexible. We do more and better research than we did. We don't have the paranoia we do about how we're going to staff courses. We have actually the ability with the doctoral program to staff courses, and so it's actually improved the teaching quite a bit. So we're doing a lot more interesting things than we used to.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add about the buildings?
Yeah, they're a good set. I mean, the nice thing about the buildings is, back then, these are specialized artisans, and they built them to last. So it's not, the real core of the building, is good. I mean, as long as wood doesn't rot, it'll last for hundreds of years, and so it should last quite a while.
Okay. Anything you want to add about yourself?
Yeah.